Men, the most revealing moments in early dating aren't when she's sweet, agreeable, or enjoying your company. They're when she gets angry, upset, or offended over things that seem disproportionate to the situation. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit hype to boost this episode. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where viewers are joining from. Anger test 1. She gets angry. When you don't text back immediately. When she becomes visibly upset, gives you the cold shoulder, or directly confronts you about not responding to her texts within minutes or hours, most men think she just really likes them and wants their attention. She's actually testing whether you'll drop everything to manage her emotions, establish a precedent where you're always available to her, and see if you'll prioritize her validation needs over your own time, work, and responsibilities. What this test actually reveals. This anger reveals she's measuring how much control she can exert over your time and attention through emotional manipulation. Women who get genuinely angry over response times aren't anxious about connection. They're establishing whether displays of upset will make you immediately accommodate her demands. She's not scared you don't care. She's testing whether making you feel guilty will give her priority access to you whenever she wants it. Notice how she frames the complaint. If she says things like, "You always do this," after one instance, she's manufacturing pattern to justify disproportionate anger. If she questions whether you care about her based on response time, she's deliberately making you prove your interest by sacrificing your boundaries. If she compares you to how responsive other men were, or how available you should be, she's using comparison to pressure you into compliance. Watch what response time actually triggered the anger. If you replied within a few hours during your workday and she's upset, she expects unrealistic availability. If you responded next morning to a late-night text and she's angry, she expects 24/7 responsiveness. If you were clearly busy with commitments you'd mentioned and she's still upset, she expects her needs to supersede your responsibilities. Pay attention to whether she accepts reasonable explanations. If you explain you were in a meeting, working, or handling responsibilities, and she remains angry, she's not looking for understanding. She's testing whether her anger makes you apologize for having a life. If she dismisses your legitimate reasons or says, "You could have texted during that," she's establishing that no excuse justifies not prioritizing her immediate validation needs. Observe what she expects you to do about it. If she wants reassurance, you'll respond faster next time. She's training you to be constantly available. If she wants apology for normal response times, she's conditioning you to feel guilty for reasonable boundaries. If she wants explanation of where you were and what you were doing, she's establishing surveillance as normal relationship behavior. Why this is a test? This is a test because immediate response to texts is manufactured urgency that reveals whether you'll prioritize her emotional comfort over your own life structure. Women who create anger around response times are mapping whether guilt and upset will make you rearrange your priorities. Your response shows her whether emotional reactions will control your availability or whether you'll maintain boundaries around your time and attention. The correct response is maintaining your communication patterns without apology. Explain once that you respond when reasonably able and that your response time reflects normal adult scheduling, not level of interest. If she continues being angry, you've learned she expects emotional manipulation to override your boundaries. Men who apologize and promise faster responses have just taught her that creating upset gets her what she wants. Anger test 2, she gets angry, that you made plans without consulting. Her first. When she becomes upset, accusatory, or offended because you made plans with friends, committed to work obligations, or scheduled activities without checking with her first, most men think she wants to be included or feels left out. She's actually testing whether you'll start requiring her permission for your own life, establish precedent where she has approval authority over your schedule, and see if guilt will make you prioritize her feelings about your autonomy over your actual freedom to live your life. What this test actually reveals: this anger reveals she's measuring whether she can position herself as authority over your independent decisions, despite having no legitimate claim to control your schedule. Women who get angry about you making your own plans aren't hurt about exclusion. They're testing whether displays of upset will condition you to seek approval before committing to anything, giving her veto power over your social life, work commitments, and personal time. Notice what kinds of plans triggered the anger. If it's plans with friends you see regularly, she's testing whether she can restrict your existing social connections. If it's work commitments or professional obligations, she's measuring whether she can position her feelings as more important than your career. If it's family commitments or personal activities you've always done, she's testing whether she can become central authority over all your time allocation. Watch the reasoning she gives for why you should have consulted her. If she says, "We should coordinate schedules," she's framing control as practical logistics. If she says, "I wanted to spend that time with you," she's making her desires supersede your existing plans. If she says, "I just want to be included in decisions," she's disguising approval-seeking as communication. All of these frame her authority over your schedule as reasonable rather than controlling. Pay attention to whether she had conflicting plans or actual need for that time. If she had nothing specific planned and is just upset you didn't check first, this is pure control testing. She's establishing that you need permission even when there's no logistical conflict. If she did have plans she wanted to make with you, notice whether she actually asked or just expected you'd keep that time available by default. Observe how she expects you to handle future scheduling. If she wants you to run your plans by her before committing, she's establishing approval process. If she wants shared calendar access or regular schedule coordination, she's setting up surveillance system. If she expects you to prioritize her potential desire for your time over your actual commitments, she's testing whether her feelings about your autonomy override your freedom to make independent choices. Why this is a test? This is a test because requiring consultation before making your own plans is control disguised as consideration. Women who create anger around your independent scheduling are mapping whether guilt will make you seek permission for your own life. Your response shows her whether you'll maintain autonomy or whether you'll start running decisions by her for approval, gradually ceding authority over your time. The correct response is maintaining your independence without apology. Explain that you'll certainly coordinate when plans affect her or when you're deciding between time with her versus other activities, but that you make commitments to work, friends, and personal activities independently. If she remains angry, you've learned she expects veto power over your schedule. Men who start consulting her before making plans have just handed her authority over their autonomy. Anger test 3. She gets angry. When you don't post about her on social media. When she becomes upset, makes passive-aggressive comments, or directly confronts you about not posting photos of her, mentioning her in stories, or publicly acknowledging your relationship on social media, most men think she wants to feel special or be shown off. She's actually testing whether public performance of the relationship matters more to you than your private feelings. Establish that her need for external validation supersedes your comfort with social media, and see if guilt will make you broadcast your connection for her image management. What this test actually reveals. This anger reveals she's measuring whether insecurity about external perception can pressure you into public displays that serve her validation needs rather than genuine desire to share your life. Women who get angry about social media posting aren't seeking affirmation of your feelings. They're testing whether her need to demonstrate relationship status to others will override your boundaries about privacy, social media usage, or pace of public acknowledgement. Notice what she's specifically upset about not seeing. If she wants couple photos posted, she needs visual proof for her audience that she's in relationship. If she wants to be mentioned by name or tagged, she needs her identity publicly tied to you. If she wants your relationship status updated or specific acknowledgement posts, she's managing how others perceive her availability and desirability through your social media performance. Watch who she mentions when expressing this anger. If she references what other couples post or what her friends' partners do, she's using comparison to pressure you into matching public displays others make. If she mentions people who might see your social media, she needs specific audiences to know about your relationship. If she talks about people who don't know you're together, she's managing perception management with particular individuals. Pay attention to the timeline of when this anger emerges. If it's early in dating, before you're even established as a serious couple, she's rushing public commitment that doesn't match relationship reality. If it's after she's already posted extensively about you, she needs reciprocal public claiming for balance. If it follows her noticing you haven't removed previous relationship content, she wants evidence you've publicly replaced your ex with her. Observe what she says she needs this for. If she frames it as showing you care or proving you're serious, she's making public performance the measure of private feelings. If she says it's about making her feel secure or special, she's positioning her validation needs as your responsibility. If she mentions what others might think if you don't post, she's revealing this is about managing external perception rather than relationship connection. Why this is a test? This is a test because social media posting is external performance that reveals whether her validation needs and image management will control your public behavior. Women who create anger around posting are mapping whether guilt will make you broadcast the relationship on her timeline and terms. Your response shows her whether you'll let her insecurity about how others perceive her dictate your social media usage and boundaries around privacy. The correct response is maintaining your authentic social media patterns without pressure. Explain that you share things organically when it feels natural, and that public posting isn't how you measure or express relationship investment. If she remains angry, you've learned she needs external validation more than private connection. Men who start posting on demand have just taught her that anger about perception management overrides their boundaries. Anger test 4. She gets angry. When you don't take her side in a disagreement with others. When she becomes upset, accuses you of betrayal, or creates conflict because you didn't automatically support her position in disagreement with her friends, family, or others, most men think she needed backup or felt abandoned. She's actually testing whether you'll sacrifice objective truth and your own judgment to provide unconditional support. Establish that loyalty means agreeing with her regardless of reality, and see if guilt about not defending her will make you enable unreasonable positions. What this test actually reveals. This anger reveals she's measuring whether you'll abandon independent assessment of situations to provide blind support for her narrative regardless of accuracy. Women who get angry when you don't take their side automatically aren't hurt by lack of support. They're testing whether you'll let loyalty override truth, enable her unreasonable behavior, and position yourself against others on her behalf, even when she's wrong. Notice what the disagreement was actually about. If she was objectively wrong about facts, or being unreasonable in her demands, she's testing whether you'll support falsehood for her ego. If the situation was genuinely ambiguous, or had merit on both sides, she's testing whether you'll eliminate nuance to show absolute loyalty. If she was clearly in the right, but you offered balanced perspective, she's testing whether even mild independence from her position triggers abandonment accusations. Watch how she frames what you should have done. If she expected you to argue her case regardless of merit, she wants advocacy without judgment. If she expected you to defend her character, even while acknowledging the specific issue, she can't separate position from identity. If she expected you to oppose anyone who disagreed with her, she needs you as weapon against others rather than partner with independent perspective. Pay attention to how she characterizes your actual response. If you stayed neutral and she calls it betrayal, she equates non-participation in her battles with opposition. If you offered balanced perspective and she says you took their side, she can't tolerate even minimal disagreement from you. If you supported the essence of her position, but not her approach, and she's angry, she needs validation of how she handles situations, not just support for her interests. Observe whether she's willing to consider she might have been wrong. If she remains certain she was completely right, despite your perspective, she lacks self-awareness or refuses accountability. If she acknowledges problems with her position, but is still angry you didn't defend it publicly, she expects you to enable unreasonable behavior in front of others. If she can't separate support for her as person from support for every position she takes, she hasn't developed mature understanding of partnership. Why this is a test? This is a test because automatic side-taking is loyalty that overrides judgment and enables dysfunction. Women who create anger around not receiving blind support are mapping whether guilt about disappointing her will make you abandon truth and independent assessment. Your response shows her whether you'll maintain integrity and honest perspective, or whether you'll become yes man, who enables unreasonable behavior to avoid her anger. The correct response is offering support for her as a person while maintaining honest assessment of situations. Explain that you care about her well-being and always support her interests, but that real support sometimes means honest perspective rather than blind agreement. If she remains angry, you've learned she expects enabling over honesty. Men who start automatically taking her side have just agreed to abandon their judgment for her ego. Anger test 5. She gets angry about something you did that she never said bothered her before. When she becomes suddenly upset about behavior, habits, or choices that she previously accepted, never mentioned, or even seemed to enjoy, most men are confused about why this is suddenly a problem. She's actually testing whether retroactive anger about previously acceptable behavior will make you apologize for things that weren't wrong, establish that her feelings in the moment override previous agreements, and see if you'll accept blame for following expectations she's now changing. What this test actually reveals. This anger reveals she's measuring whether inconsistent standards and moving goalposts will keep you off balance and apologizing, even when you did nothing wrong by previous guidelines. Women who create sudden anger about previously acceptable behavior aren't genuinely upset about the action. They're testing whether you'll accept responsibility for failing to read her mind about changed expectations and whether you'll apologize for behavior she previously endorsed. Notice whether she acknowledges this is new concern. If she acts like she's always had this boundary and you should have known, she's rewriting history to avoid admitting inconsistency. If she admits it didn't bother her before but does now, watch whether she takes any responsibility for not communicating, or whether she makes her changed feelings entirely your problem. If she seems surprised you're confused, she expects you to constantly monitor her reactions for changes rather than rely on previous feedback. Watch what the specific behavior is that's suddenly problematic. If it's something inherent to your personality or lifestyle that she enthusiastically accepted before, she's testing whether she can gradually change fundamental aspects of who you are. If it's something she specifically encouraged or participated in previously, she's testing whether you'll accept blame even for things she endorsed. If it's something totally normal that most people wouldn't object to, she's manufacturing grievances to keep you apologizing. Pay attention to when this anger emerges. If it coincides with conflict in other areas, she's piling on additional grievances to strengthen her position. If it emerges when you've maintained a boundary elsewhere, she's creating new front of attack. If it emerges when things have been good, she's introducing controlled conflict to prevent you from getting comfortable. The timing reveals whether this is genuine concern or strategic upset. Observe what she expects you to do about past instances of this behavior. If she's retroactively upset about all previous times you did this thing she never objected to, She's creating history of wrongdoing that didn't exist in real time. If she wants apology for behavior she previously accepted or encouraged, she's conditioning you to apologize for her inconsistency. If she expects you to have known this would eventually bother her, she expects mind reading over communication. Why this is a test? This is a test because retroactive anger about previously acceptable behavior is manipulation that destroys your ability to understand expectations or trust previous agreements. Women who create sudden anger over past behavior they accepted are mapping whether moving goalposts will keep you constantly apologizing and uncertain about boundaries. Your response shows her whether you'll accept blame for her inconsistency or whether you'll hold her accountable for communicating clearly. The correct response is refusing to apologize for behavior that met expectations when it occurred. Explain that you're happy to adjust going forward now that you know this bothers her, but that you won't accept blame for meeting standards she set and then changed without communication. If she remains angry, you've learned she expects you to take responsibility for her inconsistent expectations. Men who apologize for past behavior she previously accepted have just agreed that her current emotions override reality and previous agreements.